hit record to record this in case anybody misses this presentation and wants to watch it later, as well as this is just like if you were in a classroom, students. So if your behavior is not classroom acceptable on here, the same kind of thing would happen as if we were in school, where we would have to contact the deans or administration. So our guest panelists are here taking time out of their day to share with you. We want to make sure we respect their time and so on and so forth. So not only are we recording, but you should have logged in with your 214 info so we can see who is posting things or anything like that. If you turn your camera on, again, we can see that as well. So that's just kind of my disclaimer. Hopefully we don't have any issues with that would take away from this exciting event. So if you do have a question for any of the speakers, there is the chat function. So please type your question into the chat. And after each speaker is kind of done going through our standard set of questions that we have for them, we will take your individual questions if they weren't covered in their little part and kind of go from there. So that's pretty much it. So Miss Allen, I'm going to turn it over to you to begin, and whoever is the first speaker, I will, when you introduce them, I will unmute them for you.
All right, thank you very much, Christopher. I'd like to introduce all three of our speakers. James Drenke is a Chief Information Security Officer at Medline in Northfield, Illinois, Northfield, I don't remember. Rick Larson is a Business Intelligence Manager at Allstate in Northbrook. And Michael Marzelli is a VCIO, which I learned is Virtual Chief Information Officer at Pulse Technology in Carroll Stream, Illinois. So those are our three panelists, and I'd like to just give them each 3 to 4 minutes to describe their educational and experience, their career path to this point. And it might be a little, I'd be surprised if they started out figuring out that they would end up where they are now. So I'm curious about their pathway to their current positions. So James, can we start with you?
Sure, just needed to unmute myself. So hello, everybody. My career path actually started in the mid-90s. I was working in law enforcement, and it was the dot-com boom, which is when the internet started getting really big. I'd always been pretty interested in computers, and I ended up going to night school at a vocational technical college for about 12 months. Came out of that with a degree in Novell engineering, which is an operating system that doesn't exist anymore. But with that, was able to move out of the civil servant job into the IT world, where I became a Microsoft engineer. I worked on help desk and analyst and admin and engineers, architect, spacing between operating systems, networking, databases. I stayed mostly on the operational side of IS. About 8 years ago or so, my now boss asked me to make a jump into management because we were looking to start up a security program. Started it up and then worked my way up the ladder through management. And today I am Medline's CISO, which is the Chief Information Security Officer, and I hold a title in IS of Vice President.
And just out of curiosity, because I'm not exactly sure, what does a Chief Information Security Officer do?
So basically, that side of the house for me, we protect Medline from hackers and data loss and things like that. Healthcare, for a number of years now, has kind of been under siege from hackers, whether they're trying to steal patient data, or recently it's more about getting a company caught up in ransomware and extortion or exfiltration. So my job is to make sure that the business keeps running in today's weird world.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for James before we go on? If not, Rick, why don't you tell us your background?
All right, thank you. My background is a lot like James in that I started out as a in another field. I got my BA in I'm actually the fine arts, and then I went into into corporate advertising, and then from there into financial sales. And I noticed along the way when I was in the sales job that I liked working with the numbers, and I eventually went back to school just like James did in the mid 90s. And I went through a program at DePaul that only accepted people who already had a BA. And what it did was it took all the classes from a normal a BS in computer science and condensed it down to 1 year. So when you got out, you were like a new graduate with a BS in computer science. So from there, I went to a couple years, or no, more like 10 years as a computer consultant, where I got a lot of experience in a lot of different companies in a lot of different roles, but mostly just in the programming side of things. And then from there, I landed at a company, Allstate, where I worked my way up in some management roles and eventually became I'm a data architect. And then I moved around to a couple of companies, and now I'm back at Allstate as a business intelligence manager. So what that means is I work with a lot of databases throughout the organization, trying to gather and present data the way that the decision makers need to see it. So I use a lot of specialized tools for that.
And what is data architecture exactly?
That's just organizing data in the most economical way and in the most kind of like a business-centric way, so that you organize it either the way the business wants to see it or the way that your users can get at it the easiest. So it's sometimes you work on it so that it comes out easy, and sometimes you have to design it so that it goes in easy. It kind of depends on how the user needs to see.
Okay. Any questions for Rick? If not, Michael, what is your background?
So my pathway in technology started just at a very young age with a passion for anything that plugged in or had batteries. So I was that kid pulling things apart and, and just monkeying with everything. And I always wanted to be involved in science and technology in some way. And my educational pathway, which I went to St. Viator High School right down the street from Hersey, which I know is a rival. And my educational pathway through college, I actually started out with pre-medicine. And I found that I just always had my head somewhere else, and that somewhere else was really wondering what I could already be doing in the working world. And I always had a passion for business also. So I ended up, I got a degree in math and science, but immediately went to work doing, multiple positions in technology. I started out developing websites. I had an opportunity to work for an audio video systems integrator, and I got some experience professionally on that side. And then also did a lot of consulting on my own on the computer side. And through just over the years, just really honing in on what I want to do, it led me on this current path where the company I work for right now, we do managed network services. So some companies are large enough where they have their own IT departments. There's a lot of companies in the small to mid-size range that they outsource. And instead of having a single consultant that they're paying to take care of their network, there's companies like ours, which for a monthly fee, we become your full IT department. So when we talk about me being a VCIO, a virtual chief information officer, with those customers, I function as the chief information officer, driving the business side of their goals, but on a virtual format. So I work with multiple companies in that CIO capacity. On the business side of our own company, I also serve as the CIO of Pulse Technology. So I'm full-time doing that. So juggling that with working with our customers. But technology has always been a passion of mine, and along the educational pathway, I supplemented a lot of my undergraduate with certifications and things like that to get some of the more specific knowledge in the IT area. But most of my knowledge has really just come from, you know, that inquisitive mentality of pulling things apart and wanting to make things work. So my first position with Pulse Technology, I worked on the help desk. I was our first help desk person years ago, and literally developed that program where that literal help desk was sitting in a closet off to the side of our server room. So from there, you know, I found career pathways into management, and that's where I'm at today.
All right. Well, I think everybody can see that in IT, there are hundreds of different ways and different pathways you can take and different ways you can use that skill in a business environment. And most of you, I think it's clear to me anyway, that business and IT are very closely related. So let me ask you this. How much of your, did you know about the business versus IT, or IT versus the business? Do you think it's important to know both of them, or is one more important than the other?
So I think it's absolutely important to know both sides of it. So much of IT is driven by economics and by money. What you find in a lot of, there's two different mentalities that I've seen when it comes to kind of envisioning and building and working on a network. There's the technical mentality where money's not an issue and the sky's the limit. You could do anything you want, but the reality is that most organizations that you're going to be working with are going to have some type of budget. So you have to have that business sense to be able to balance what can we do for what kind of budget. And the other part of business, it's not just about finance and money. It's about having people skills. We call them soft skills. The ability to talk to other people in your organization to push your agenda. I mean, as the IT person, there's going to be things that you want to implement for very important reasons, you know, especially on the security side, that the people that on the economic side and actually signing off on some of the projects, they need to know about, but they may not have a direct understanding of how all those things work. So on the business side, in order to get some of the technical work done, you have to be able to operate in a business environment and interface with people at all different levels, people that have some technical experience, but then some people that may have zero technical experience, but are still important to what you do.
Okay, thank you. James or Rick, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I would totally agree, and I would say it in a little different way, in that I think the people that I've seen who are most successful in IT are the ones that are able to make that as easy to understand for the business side as possible, because sometimes we as technical people can start to talk in our own jargon, and it's not always understandable by everyone. So I think it's the people who can make that plain are the people who are going to do well.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously can echo it as well. I'd remind anyone that's younger that's moving into the field that, you know, while IT feels very technical, it is a customer service related field. The folks in the business, as well as the customers of your business, require you, and you need to interact with them appropriately in order to make sure everything is moving the way it's supposed to.
Okay. Any questions from the audience? If not, I'll ask another one.
Hang on, we do have one question.
Right.
The question says that technology changes so fast, as we know. How do you keep current in the field? You know, so if you're not going to school, and are you getting degrees all the time, or how do you stay current on the tech, especially on the tech side?
I'll start that one because I'm actually very passionate about it. IT is not a 9-to-5 job. If you want to be good, the majority of my certifications, the majority of the things that I learned were on my own time, after hours, on the weekends, as I was progressing. that really is what makes the difference between a good IT person and somebody that kind of finds a gig and is stale there for a long period of time. It's almost passion in order to be good at IT.
Yeah, I think I would add to that too, in that so much of what I learned in school, almost everything I learned in school, I guess completely obsolete now. So that you just have to have a curiosity, and I think you have to like to learn to new things. You're not just going to sit at your desk and do the same things day after day after day. It's always changing, and it's always learning, and and you have to be kind of comfortable with that. Sort of embrace change, because it happens a lot.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like James was saying, it's not a 9 to 5. And just, echoing Rick also, it's got to be a passion. It's got to be something that is just built into what you do daily. So, even down to playing video games. What's interesting is a lot of times in interviews that we have here, we do a little bit of talk about specific skills and ask things like, oh, how do you reset a password? How do you do this? Here's a scenario, how are you going to fix it? But we also spend some time talking about, hey, what do you do in your off time? What do you do? If you play video games, what kind of video games? Things like that. Because the people that have this as a job, they're the IT person 9 to 5, and then at home they forget about anything that's happening at the office. The people that have a career in IT and you see progress, they're the ones that are constantly using the technology outside of the office. Part of that is, technology changes so fast that it's difficult to really grasp it and wrap your head around it unless you're constantly using it. And there's ways that you can do that at work also. So for example, myself, I have I'm surrounded by multiple computers at any given time. In my office here, I've got 10 different screens. I have a couple of servers, a couple of computers. Some of those computers are actually for what I do day to day, but I have a server that is really just intended for me to install the latest versions of software and just to, keep messing around and purposely trying to break things and create problems and then find the solution. It's really something that you just do all the time.
Okay, great. Good question.
We do have another question too, if I can cut in. And it is, besides doing technical work with IT, what other skills and jobs can you do with IT?
Yeah.
If anyone wants to. So
I can start with that too. In my area, not only do we have the security side, but we have the risk side as well. So I've got a number of auditors who have an IT background from college, but didn't do a whole lot of IT, but they're able to translate IT into regulatory or compliance requirements. So they fit into that role. Or we've got folks that work on the pre-sale side that are working with the sales folks and working with customers to help translate, again, that IT to kind of English deal.
Yeah, and then there's always like the user experience people too, who work who maybe have a design flair, but they also know kind of the underworkings in on a website or in a database, so that they can more accurately design a web page and just make it look good. But they know just from their experience that is possible, and that the way that they design it is going to be the way that it works, and it'll work efficiently. So there's not always people just writing the code, but there's other people as well.
And in one of the areas that I see on a daily basis in the sales area, if you get into IT and you find that you like the technical part, but you really, really love working with people, and there's also a large potential to make a lot of money in sales. Some sales positions are going to have more potential than others. And the thing about sales is that, it is very, very hard in some places to make that kind of money that you may want to make in a sales position. But having that technical background, I will tell you from experience working with some of our sales reps that we have at our company, and then also some of our vendors, you very quickly can pick out which sales reps really do have a technical understanding and can talk like a normal person, versus the sales reps that just said, hey, I want to get into sales and make a ton of money, but know nothing about technology. And having that edge of actually really knowing about the technology, it gives you a major advantage if you do have a passion for sales.
Okay. So what would you recommend for these high school students who are considering an IT career? What would be the requirements today? I realize they change regularly, but what would you recommend for them as far as programming language, skills, basic knowledge, certifications? Is there anything that anybody going into IT needs, or is it specialized into the particular area that you want to pursue?
That's a tough one. I would say, at least with myself, the most important thing was developing that network around me of people and just being willing to get involved in whatever technology opportunity presented itself. It is important, I think, also to have certifications and to build your resume to be able to prove yourself on a piece of paper when those opportunities do present themselves. But most of the opportunities that I've come into professionally have been because it was someone I knew, somebody, a friend of a friend. So keep your ears open and just maintain those relationships. And it's interesting too that within the IT world, I think it's very important to maintain your contacts over the years, because it's very common to move around a lot in the IT world. And that's actually one of the biggest challenges that we have as a company, is that you very quickly can specialize and find something that you want to move to that maybe your current company doesn't offer an opportunity, and so you find yourself going somewhere else. But you may be looking to your old company, maybe you end up going back there, or maybe that old company becomes a resource for a project that you're working on. So I would say relationships, and just over the years maintaining those. And again, that comes back to soft skills too. So the business side, I can't emphasize enough how important the business side to IT is.
Yeah.
We have a couple of questions sort of related to Ms. Allen's question about the certifications and the degrees. So if you're hiring somebody, I guess, and I know it could depend on the company, are you looking for just a college degree? Does a college degree not necessarily matter? If they have one, are you looking for more certifications? Or for those high school students, would you recommend the bachelor's degree, for sure? Or is it just like, if they know how to do it just by their own, like, tinkering in their basement, is that enough? Like, how, I guess, would you say, what do you look at when you're hiring people, especially if you don't know them, from previous jobs or whatnot?
Right. I mean, I think one of the things you pointed out there was it depends a lot on the company. Certain organizations or industries require that bachelor's, or they require, in some cases, masters in order to get into management. Like we were talking about our paths, right? For me, going into my senior year, I lost my father, and that ended my chance to go to college. So I ended up having to go right into the workforce. And, I bobbled around for a number of years until I turned 21. I applied to the police academy. And like I said, I got into law enforcement. It wasn't a lack of intelligence or the ability. Sometimes you just can't get into school. And what I had to do was outwork everybody and get a lot of certificates. I was had kind of an alphabet after my name of certificates in the industry. And then eventually, you make a name for yourself, as Michael was saying. Illinois, Lake County, Cook County, it's really a small niche group. If you're going to work in this area, you're going to bump into the same people for a long time. So you make connections, you do those things, you work hard, and as Michael said, you've got to have the want and desire to tinker. Critical thinking is huge in IT. To me, it's almost as important as the degree. So when I hire today, we hire people with 4-year. We hire people coming out of vocational. It's really how well the person shines when we get a chance to interview them, and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. I think the number one thing for me, especially for a younger person who I'm interviewing, like the resume will get them to my desk, but the first thing that I want to see from them, like is showing initiative and showing curiosity, kind of what Michael was saying about having that, just asking them some of the questions that aren't job related, just to get to how they step up to things, how hard they work, have that natural curiosity of wanting to take something apart and to put it back together. All of those things are so important for that interview. And then again, as I said earlier about embracing change, it's sort of a hard thing to get to in an interview, but you always kind of look for those things just to make sure that they're not so set in their ways, that they're going to want to grow and to branch out.
Yeah, exactly. I like what you said about how that resume gets to your desk. Same thing here. There is no magic formula for who we hire and who we don't hire. It really all comes down to some of those things that we keep talking about. You know, the willingness to tinker, the willingness to outwork everyone, stuff like that. You know, I would say my advice would be, you know, work on your resume as best as you can, because that resume, you know, the stronger it is, the more certifications that are on there, it maximizes your chance of getting to the desk of the person that's going to hire you. And you may be going through an HR department that has specific requirements that they need to screen first, and maybe they are looking for specific certificates or a specific level of education. But once you've met those requirements to get to the desk of the person who's actually going to hire you, there's a lot of things that may not be on that resume that are going to be the reasons why you're hired. But also, you know, I will tell you, I've worked with a lot of people that have every certificate in the world and have a world-class education, and I'd feel like I need to constantly be checking their work. So again, there's no magic formula, but I would say that I would look at all those things as a picture and just, you know, find out what works best for you.
Okay, thank you. So what kind of a role are you, if somebody is just starting out in the industry, a recent graduate, what kind of roles do those people typically end up in IT? What's a good starting role?
Yeah, we hire a lot of help desk people with little to no experience, because that's something that when you're working on a help desk, it's easy to provide coaching because you could have someone with you all the time, and then there's coworkers that you can bounce ideas off of. That's very, very typical. There's also a lot of entry level positions where you're doing things a little with labor, pulling wire, stuff like that. But I would say if you're looking to get into troubleshooting and more of the technical and the network side of it, help desk is where a lot of times we'll look at someone and say, hey, you know what, we think you have potential, and we'll put them on the help desk and then progress from there.
Yeah, we at Allstate actually hire entry-level programmers, and we have sometimes, like, you'll even be brought in as it's called, I'm a business analyst, and that is someone who could actually like gather requirements for the program, and then someone else would write the program for them. Those are two kind of common entry-level jobs at Allstate.
Yeah, and for us, I would say if you are going to a four-year university, do not pass on the chance for internships. It's free advertisement for yourself. I hire a lot of interns because once you have them for a few years or a year, you know what you want to know. Most of them, we give them job offers before they have Christmas of their senior year because we don't want them going somewhere else. So make sure you leverage those options.
And with that said, one of the questions came in, are there any like kind of hot spots of IT? The question had cybersecurity as an example, and I know I went to some college updates this year, and so many colleges are adding cybersecurity as a major. So I don't know if that's probably one, but are there any other maybe hot areas or areas that if students are looking for the future or to possibly a better job opportunities? Is there something that they should kind of maybe, I know again, like we said, it changes all the time, but if you can look into the future 5 years or so, what do you think might be kind of the trend?
Yeah, I think another hotspot is it's called data science. There's a lot of data scientists out there that and that's sort of like a combination of statistics and computer science, where you take a look at big data or just high volumes of data, and then try and find some correlations and some insights you're not going to normally get just by looking at the data. And that uses languages like R and Python and some of those newer languages. So that's a hotspot for sure.
Yeah, I can certainly talk about. It's hard to find good cyber people. The problem is it's also hard to come out of college and be a cyber person. Cyber requires a large amount of information on how the network works and database works and operating systems work. So if cyber is a passion, certainly, don't hack. But there's ways that you can learn about. There's ways you can learn about ethical hacking. There's certifications in ethical hacking. Again, the internships, make sure you get well-rounded. We hire quite a bit from DePaul. They have a great 4-year cybersecurity program. But I also hire for vocational schools, and that might just because of my background. I have a soft spot for those folks. It's just the 4-year wasn't their path. But again, as we've discussed, it's the drive, the willingness to show how hard you want to work, as well as your ability to critical think.
So with our business, the hotspot that we've been working with for the last year or so has been any kind of technology that's going to help people work mobily. So anything that is voice over IP phone systems, phones that you can plug in your office and literally pick up and take home and plug in your home internet. Microsoft 365, having the ability to have your data in the cloud, all that stuff, programs that instead of downloading the program to a server and running off the server, now run in the cloud. That's all been our hotspot for businesses. Number one, because they're looking to reduce costs, which that's a way they can do that. And then also to have the ability for disaster recovery if something were to happen to their building. As a company, we've been selling this stuff for a long time. And as a company, 3 years ago, our main office, which was in Oak Grove, had wind blew half of the roof off and it rained all weekend. The building was totaled. But because we worked with this model of mobility and disaster recovery, we were up and running the very next day. We had no issues with that. What we saw to be very interesting with the coronavirus and the stay-at-home order, we found that there was a massive shift immediately for the remote worker to all of a sudden be working out of their bedroom or their basement or their living room. And a lot of the technologies that we had put into place for our customers to be able to bring their phone home or use their computer as a phone or have their data in the cloud or all that stuff, they started to use that. And then we also, with that shift, there were some people that never worried about it and they never thought they'd ever be working at home. So we saw a lot of activity where now we're helping customers, people in their homes get better internet connections, go on voice over IP for the first time, all these things. And with that too, I think it shows a little bit of the job security that's in this area of IT that really, no matter what's going on in the world, we're a connected world, and data it drives a huge piece of how the world functions. And without that data and without that transmission of the data, everything really comes to a standstill. So, you become a very important part of how that whole machine works. And no matter what's going on in politics or economics or whatever, there's going to be a need for people to make sure that that data can go across those wires and travel through the air.
Very interesting. I participated in a webinar from Argonne Labs for a bioengineer this morning. And it was interesting. He said he was largely any programming languages he knew, which was Python and R were a couple of them, which I had never heard of before. But he said he just picked them up, he just learned them, and he just needs them for specific things. And somebody asked him what he would recommend these students who are interested in biomedical engineering take. Computer, you can never go wrong taking computer science. And it's just interesting that it seems like we're using computers so much more, and we know a little bit about them, but we still need people that know a lot about them in all these different ways. Do you see people tinkering with computers? Do you see that as helpful for an IT professional, or do you see it as kind of not irrelevant or damaging? Or maybe it doesn't matter.
No, I mean, I think the tinkering is, as we've all discussed, is super important. As Michael brought up with the COVID stuff, our company was not a work from home company. And in the period of 3 days, we were no work from home to 10,000 people working from home. And I was literally down in an auditorium building PCs with the PC techs because we needed IT folks down there to crank them out. And, I haven't built a PC in a long time, but it doesn't leave you. If you're an IT person, you're an IT person. And, show me the list, how do we do it? And before you know it, you've built 100, then you've built 200. And I think you're almost kind of born with it in IT. You have that or you don't.
Yeah, exactly. You always want to maintain that curiosity, and I think where when you are that tinkerer, you have a little bit of an advantage, because if you look at the way that the world is going on the IT side, things are, for the end user, are getting simpler. They're getting they just work. So I kind of call it like the Apple syndrome, or the Apple mentality of, hey, I'm gonna go get a new iPhone, I'm gonna download my app, it's gonna work, and when it stops working, I take it to Apple and get a new phone. And despite the ease of use on the front end with the user experience, that doesn't change any of the back end and the complexity of what's happening in the background. And in fact, what's happening in the background is probably more complicated than ever. And I consider myself fortunate, because I started to get into computers at a time when I don't know if this is going to make any sense for anyone other than the panel here, but when DOS was still a thing, and Microsoft Windows with all the graphics and everything like that, it put a mask on an operating language that was just all text-based, which is DOS. However, in the background with Microsoft and with Windows and everything, all that stuff still exists under the hood. And I think that the more that you can understand about what happens under the hood, you may not use any of the information for days, weeks, years at a time, but one day, like James was talking about with jumping down and building computers, you're going to pull that skill out of your back pocket. And there's, in talking about the programming languages, there's some programming languages that I picked up over the years just because I loved what I could do with them, and not necessarily learn them because I had a business purpose, but just because, hey, I could do some cool things with them. And then you find that, the more that you put into your toolkit, your Swiss Army knife of IT, you're gonna at some point pull it out. You're gonna say, hey, you know what? I may have never used a string of HTML ever professionally, but the person from our accounting department is trying to send out some type of statement they're trying to format, and they said, oh my gosh, I need someone that knows HTML because I need to change the color of the background. That's a real example from the last month, by the way. But, but that all comes from tinkering. Like, the only reason why I know HTML is because, back in the 90s, I'm like, hey, look what I can do. That's it.
Yep.
Yeah, I would add too, if you're going to be in IT, you better be a tinkerer, because everyone in your family is going to think you can fix it.
Yes. Yeah,
I've
sometimes
disappointed a lot of people.
Sometimes, especially with family, you may want to downplay what you know.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So I was going to ask what specific practices have made you successful in your career, but I think tinkering is coming out to be curiosity and a desire to learn, to embrace change. Is there anything you can add to those that we've already discussed?
I would say stay passionate about it. I mean, it's difficult to force tinkering, and it's difficult to force wanting to do this stuff 24 hours a day. And I found that in my life, I've always been able to become successful at what I'm passionate about. And then all the other things that come with it, you know, title and salary and all that, that'll come. But if you chase passion and you just say, hey, I want to be involved in this, for me, that's been a major key.
Yeah, I would add that too. I see with a lot of the folks coming out of college now, there's a lot of emphasis on, hey, when do I become a level 2? When do my title change? And it's so foreign to me because my generation, it was more about kind of driving forward and trying to figure out, how to be the best at what I was doing. So I often coach the younger generation in my org on, just strive to be the best at what you're doing. The rest of it will show up. The titles, the money, it'll all come. But if your goal is that title and money, you're never going to be good at what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just one thing I just thought about, a mentor who I worked with when I was first starting on this. He gave me a good piece of advice. He said, never, ever, ever say to someone who's asking you to do something, never say, that's not my job. Like, you just do it no matter what, and no matter how small the request is, you're going to learn something, and you're going to make a connection, and to Michael's point, it's just another thing to put into your Swiss Army knife, because just never say it's not my job, because it's amazing how many times you do hear that.
Good advice. Okay, what gives you the most satisfaction in your profession? And a normal day, what do you get the most satisfaction from? And then what is your greatest challenge also?
For me, it's easy. It's knowing my organization's role in society. We service 40 to 60% of the hospitals in the U.S. When our systems are up and running, people are being taken care of. It seems weird, like as an IT person, that is what drives me. But coming from the civil servant background, I worked in the hospitals when I was in high school. My mother was a nursing director. I have a strong passion for helping people. And in IT, really, if the systems aren't up, you've got thousands of people that aren't working, and they're not bringing home a check, and they're not taking care of their kids. And for us, our customers, they're not servicing patients, and especially now in COVID. People can die. I know that sounds, really deep, but that's what makes me work the way I do every day, is to make sure that those systems stay up and those folks have jobs and people are taken care of.
That's nice. Yeah, mine isn't anywhere like as deep as that, unfortunately. Kind of what gets me going every day is because I handle a lot of ad hoc requests every day. I just love when something comes in to me, and I have to figure it out, and it's chaos. And then what goes out the door is all organized, and it works well. For me, I just love that. It is I'm taking something in and fixing it or making it better, and then sending it out. I love that.
Yeah, for me, same thing, where there's a lot of chaos in the IT world. A lot of things change on the fly, and you may begin your day with a certain idea of what's going to happen, and it totally gets turned upside down. And I love being that general on the field, calling plays on the fly, and that just gets me going. It gets me going, looking at a situation that I'm surrounded by people that they don't understand it. To them, it's chaos. The network is down. The black box of the cloud isn't working for them. But then being able to be calm in the middle of that, and I think that's a skill too, that over time you do develop a calmness as you get more knowledge and you've been in enough stressful situations. You develop that confidence, and you can be that calm in the center of the chaos. And I like getting everybody through that and getting them to the other side. The biggest challenge that I've run into on the flip side of that is as you get into management, and this is something I wanted to bring up because, just because, you are the manager of your IT group doesn't necessarily mean that is the place you're going to be the happiest. The key to is finding what you excel at and where your passion really is. Again, there's people that, they spend their entire career in the field, visiting customer sites, visiting, hands-on building machines, troubleshooting at that level. And then there's people that don't want to do that, and they spend the majority of their life in a management role. There's positives and negatives of both. And I'll tell you, on the management side, while it is great to have a title and, there are some financial perks that come with that, there's also, there's some challenges where, it's, to be blunt about it, it's like, I feel like sometimes I have, I have 2 daughters at home. I've got extra kids here where it's, you take a lot of flack. They look at you, sometimes they don't understand your decisions. It's kind of like, hey, they think that you're nuts sometimes for making some of these decisions, and sometimes you have to make hard decisions. And you do take a lot of I think undeserved flack at the management level, but at the same time, I love that organized chaos. So as being that general on the field, I like having things fly at me. And I like, to me, part of the challenge at this level of IT is, okay, you have someone that doesn't understand what's going on and they are super, super angry about something. And I need to figure out a way to meet them where they're at and win them over. And then you turn an enemy into a friend. And to me, that also is one of the most rewarding things that can happen in this field.
Okay, thank you. So what is something that nobody told you about working in IT that you have discovered?
For me, it went back to that first question from one of the students about, how do you keep up? When I was getting in IT, nobody told me that it changed every month. And that you had to keep getting new certifications in order to be marketable. It was like a little secret until they got you in there. And it hasn't stopped. I've been doing IT for over 20 years, and it does not stop, and I don't think it ever will. So you better like change, and you better like the chaos, like Michael said. And the best ones can handle the chaos and speak in non-technical terms to the folks that are freaking out. Because when your main systems are down and you're not shipping product and the owner's there, he doesn't want to hear about why it's broke. He wants to understand when it's not going to be broke. So.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that too. I didn't have any clue how fast it would change. Like, you always hear about all the job security and you felt like you were going to get a good job, but there is no sitting still. You got to definitely keep up on it and just hustle. I feel like I'm always hustling, but I like that.
Yeah, and what nobody ever told me was that not everybody's going to care about it like the level that I do, and I've had to develop a thick skin for that, because you do, when you interface with some people that just want the facts and just want things to be working, sometimes it can be hard to take some undeserved beatings. But at the same time, though, that's just part of it, and not everybody is going to appreciate what you do. But what I appreciate about the industry is just knowing that, it's like every other business. So that's one thing I've learned over the years, and having been fortunate to kind of do some side projects that are non-IT related. You know what? Every business is going to have the positives and the negatives. So if you choose to go into the IT field and you find that, okay, not everybody's rosy, well, it's like that everywhere. And it's kind of, you develop that personality around it.
One other thing that just came to mind after Michael was saying that, it was one thing that I didn't, or that I've had to kind of get used to over the years, is that, like, when I was in school, like, I would make all of my all my programs so absolutely perfect that, and sometimes you don't have time for that. So I think a big learning for me is sometimes good enough is good enough. And it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect out the door every time, because sometimes it's not economical or it's not fast enough. And sometimes you just have to get it working like as good as it can get for the constraints you have.
All right, we're almost out of time here, so I'm going to ask you each just one more time. What advice would you give to a high school student interested in pursuing IT? As far as classes that they take, soft skills maybe that they work on, just general information. What do you think would best serve them?
That's tough because I think this goes back to there's no magic answer, but if I could pick one thing out of this, I would say, really figure out if it's a true passion of yours. And if it's a true passion, just do everything you can to absorb knowledge, tinker, get certifications that you're passionate about. Just go down that path. And if you find that you are thinking about IT just because, hey, you were told that you can make a lot of money or that you're going to get a fancy title or any of those things, then I mean, I would just be honest with yourself and figure out if that's really what you want. But the number one thing would be just determine if this is, not necessarily who you think you're supposed to be, but if you think it's who you are. Because for you to be successful, you don't go to work every day and do the job of an IT person. You are an IT person.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I think a lot of times maybe high school students assume that they should have their whole lives planned out as far as what career they're going to do when. And I just don't think that's accurate. I think most of us take a winding path and we end up where we end up at different times in our life. So I guess I would say just follow kind of where you go and then analyze there what you're passionate about and then take the next step. So you always be forward thinking, always have the next goal in mind, but don't think that you have to have your life planned out for 50 years because most of us, if we had done that, we would have been very surprised and probably disappointed with where we ended up.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you would have asked me when I was a senior, I would have told, or junior, I would have told you I was going to be a doctor. That was what I wanted to be, and that's not what happened.
Yeah, so. That's so true. Yeah.
Okay, any other words of advice for high school students? Any other questions from high school students?
I am not seeing any other questions on the chat. So this, I guess, I'll just come on to say final call if anybody does. Otherwise, if you do have questions, students, after this, if there's any students on here left, or you're watching this recorded later, feel free to reach out to your college advisor or your post-secondary counselor at your school, and we can either try to help answer it or connect you to somebody in that profession. I don't want to put any of the panelists on the spot, but possibly one of the panelists later. We could reach out to them and get an answer for you. So with the final call, question about the recording. So once we're done and this is converted or whatever Zoom does to it, I will send out the link to the post-secondary counselors and the career advisors, and however you want to share that at your schools. I know for Hersey, we will post it on our remote learning website, as well as probably our career resources website. And how each school wants to disseminate that link, they can decide on their own. Usually it's too big to post to YouTube. I've tried that before. So we usually post it through Google somewhere and you can access it. So, Miss Allen, I don't know if you have any final things.
No, I just wanted to say thank you again to our three panelists. Thank you very much for giving us an hour of your time and
Yeah,
sharing
thank you too. This has been
your
really
expertise
great.
on the IT careers.
Great.
Well, thanks for asking me.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're getting lots of thank yous in the chat from students and other staff. So with that, stay safe, everyone. Thank you, Miss Allen, for helping put this together, and for the rest of our 214 colleagues who spread the word to their students as well. And with that, I guess we'll end the meeting, and everybody have a great day. The sun's out, so if you can get out behind the computer, get some sun.
Yeah.
Do your work outside.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.